I never thought I'd be fighting back tears on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. The moment still replays in my mind like a video I can't stop watching. Standing there in my carefully chosen pale blue dress, corsage pinned perfectly at my wrist, only to hear my new daughter-in-law Jennifer's voice cut through the pre-wedding commotion. "We don't want an old TikToker here. Can someone please make sure she doesn't post anything?" And then came the words that shattered my heart completely. "Actually, can we just keep her out of the professional photos altogether?" I stood frozen, clutching my vintage handbag, as my own son Michael nodded in agreement. But what happened next changed everything. Not just that day, but my entire relationship with my family. When the wedding photographer's assistant whispered, "Aren't you mature, Margaret? My boss is your biggest fan and would love to feature you," I realized that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't anger, it's influence. 3 years ago, if you had told me that at 63 I would become what the younger generation calls TikTok famous, I would have laughed until my reading glasses fell off my nose. I was just Margaret Wilson then, retired high school librarian, widow of 5 years, and grandmother to 3 beautiful grandchildren. My days were spent tending to my small garden, attending my book club meetings, and occasionally babysitting for Michael and Jennifer when they needed a night out. The social media adventure began innocently enough. My granddaughter Emma, who was 14 at the time, was visiting for the summer and insisted on teaching me how to use TikTok. "Grandma, you're hilarious without even trying," she said. "People would love you." I humored her, allowing her to record me reacting to those strange trends the kids were doing, offering my unfiltered opinions on modern music, and sharing snippets of wisdom from my decades of life experience. "Just be yourself," Emma coached as I stiffly tried to follow the movements to some dance. "That's what makes you special." To my absolute shock, one of our videos, me reading modern slang terms and guessing their meanings, gained over 2 million views overnight. "What in heaven's name is happening?" I asked Emma the next morning, staring at my phone in disbelief. "You've gone viral, Grandma," she squealed, bouncing on her toes. "I told you people would love you." Within weeks, my account, Mature Margaret, had gained hundreds of thousands of followers. People seemed to appreciate my straightforward nature, my willingness to learn new things, and my occasional witty commentary on the generation gap. I found myself enjoying this new creative outlet, particularly after years of quiet solitude following my husband Richard's passing. As my following grew, so did the opportunities. Small brands began reaching out for sponsorships: a reading lamp company, a tea subscription service, a comfortable shoe brand. The extra income was a pleasant surprise, helping me renovate my bathroom and finally take that trip to the Amalfi Coast I'd been dreaming about since my 20s. "You're making how much to talk about tea?" Michael had asked incredulously when I mentioned my first major sponsorship deal. "Enough to finally fix that leaking roof you've been worried about," I replied, feeling a strange pride at being financially independent again. At first, my family seemed amused by my unexpected social media career. Michael would shake his head and chuckle when I'd mention a new milestone. My daughter-in-law Jennifer would occasionally ask about my internet friends, though I noticed a certain tightness around her eyes when she did. My other son, Thomas, who lived across the country, seemed genuinely happy for me during our weekly phone calls. "Mom's more popular than any of us now," he joked to Michael during a family video call. But something shifted as my following grew past 1 million. The comments from Michael and Jennifer became less amused and more concerned. "Mom, are you sure you want to put yourself out there like this? There are a lot of scammers online," Michael said during a Sunday dinner at their house. "I'm being careful," I assured him, not mentioning the social media consultant I'd hired to help manage my growing account. "Besides, I'm having fun. It makes me feel connected." Jennifer pushed her food around her plate. "It just seems a bit undignified at your age." I felt a small sting at her words, but brushed it off. Well, my followers seem to disagree. They find it quite empowering to see someone my age embracing new technology. "Followers aren't family," Jennifer muttered. Looking back, I should have recognized the resentment building in those early comments. But I was too caught up in the excitement of my new venture, the joy of connecting with people worldwide, and yes, the financial independence that came with my growing influence. By the time Michael and Jennifer announced their wedding plans, despite having been together for 8 years and already having 2 children, my TikTok account had evolved into a full-fledged business. I'd expanded to Instagram and YouTube, where my longer life lessons with Margaret videos were particularly popular. I had a manager, a content calendar, and brand deals that paid more than Michael's annual salary as a mid-level accountant. The wedding planning began, and I offered to contribute financially. "I'd love to help with the venue or the catering," I suggested during one of our family dinners. Jennifer's mouth tightened into that familiar line. "We couldn't possibly accept your internet money." "It's real money, Jennifer," I said gently, "and I'd love to use it to make your day special." "We want to do this ourselves," Michael interjected. "The traditional way." I nodded and stepped back, though I couldn't help but notice they had no problem accepting Thomas's offer to pay for the open bar, despite him making his money through cryptocurrency investments. Hardly what I'd call traditional. As the wedding approached, I found myself increasingly excluded from the planning. My calls about dress colors and ceremony details went unreturned. When I finally received my invitation, late, I might add, it didn't include the customary mother of the groom designation, just Ms. Margaret Wilson and guest. "They're just busy," I told myself, squashing down the hurt. Wedding planning is stressful. The week before the wedding, I was scheduled to attend a creator conference in Chicago, a significant opportunity to network with brands and other content creators. When I mentioned needing to leave the wedding rehearsal dinner early to catch my flight, the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. "Seriously, Mom? You're choosing your little internet videos over my wedding?" Michael's voice was sharp in a way I'd rarely heard directed at me. "It's not little, Michael. It's my career now," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I'm not missing your wedding, just leaving the rehearsal dinner an hour early to catch a red-eye." "A career," Jennifer scoffed. "Prancing around on TikTok at your age isn't a career. It's embarrassing." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Embarrassing to whom?" I asked quietly. "To us," Michael burst out. "Do you know how many of my coworkers have come up to me talking about my TikTok mom? How Jennifer's clients ask about you during her real estate showings? How Emma came home crying because kids at school were sharing your videos and calling her mature Margaret's grandbaby?" I sat back, genuinely shocked. I had no idea it bothered you all so much. Emma helped me start the account. She seemed proud. She was 14, Mom. Now she's 17 and trying to fit in at high school. It was cute at first, but now it's just too much. You're too much. I canceled my flight to Chicago that night and spent the evening crying in my quiet house, scrolling through comments from followers who found strength and joy in my content. People who didn't find me too much. People who valued what I had to share. The morning of the wedding arrived, and I prepared myself carefully. I'd chosen a conservative pale blue dress, nothing too flashy that would draw attention away from the bride. I styled my silver hair in a simple updo and kept my makeup subtle. As I clasped my mother's pearl necklace around my neck, I made a promise to myself. Today was about Michael, not me. I wouldn't mention social media, wouldn't take any photos for my platforms, and would be simply Michael's mother, not mature Margaret. When I arrived at the vineyard where the ceremony was to take place, I was directed to a seat in the third row, not the front row traditionally reserved for parents of the couple. Jennifer's parents occupied those prime spots, along with her siblings and their spouses. Thomas, who had flown in from Seattle, found me and slid into the seat beside me. "Third row? Seriously," he whispered, looking annoyed on my behalf. "It's fine," I said, though it wasn't. "Let's just focus on making this a beautiful day for them." The ceremony was lovely, despite the ache in my heart. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, and Jennifer was radiant in her lace gown. I wiped away tears as they exchanged vows, genuinely happy for their commitment to each other, despite our recent tension. After the ceremony, guests migrated to the reception area for cocktail hour, while the wedding party took photos. I stood awkwardly with Thomas, sipping champagne and making small talk with distant relatives, when one of the photographer's assistants approached me. "Excuse me," she said, a bright smile on her face. "Aren't you mature Margaret from TikTok? My boss Eliza is the lead photographer, and she absolutely loves your content." She was hoping to introduce herself when she's done with the main wedding party shots. Before I could respond, Jennifer appeared, her bridal glow instantly replaced by a stormy expression. "We don't want an old TikToker here," she said sharply to the assistant. "Can someone please make sure she doesn't post anything?" And then, glancing at me with barely concealed disdain, "Actually, can we just keep her out of the professional photos altogether?" The assistant's eyes widened in shock, darting between Jennifer and me. I stood perfectly still, feeling as though I'd been slapped. Around us, conversations halted, as guests pretended not to listen. "Jennifer," Thomas began, his voice low with warning, but I placed a hand on his arm. "It's all right," I said quietly, though it most certainly was not. "It's her wedding day. Whatever makes her comfortable." Michael appeared at Jennifer's side, his expression a mix of embarrassment and, worst of all, agreement. He couldn't even look me in the eye as he guided his new wife away, whispering something in her ear that made her nod sharply. "Let's get out of here," Thomas urged, his face flushed with anger on my behalf. "This is unacceptable, Mom." "No," I said firmly, finding strength somewhere deep inside. "I will not give them the satisfaction of making a scene or leaving early. I am Michael's mother, and I have every right to be here, social media presence or not." What happened next was unexpected. The photographer's assistant, who had witnessed the entire exchange, touched my elbow gently. "Ms. Margaret, Eliza, my boss, asked me to tell you that she'd be honored if you'd join her for a private photo session after she finishes the official wedding shots. She says your lighting advice from your perfect selfie after 60 video changed her entire approach to portrait photography." I blinked back tears, touched by this stranger's kindness in the wake of my family's rejection. "That's very sweet, but I don't want to cause any more tension. The session would be separate from the wedding photos," she assured me. "Just for you. Eliza says it's the least she can do to thank you for your content. She's a wedding photographer now, but she's launching a portrait business next year, and having your photos in her portfolio would be amazing." Thomas squeezed my hand. "Do it, Mom. You look beautiful today, and it would be a shame not to document it." After ensuring that Michael and Jennifer were occupied with other guests, I slipped away with the assistant, whose name I learned was Maya, to meet Eliza. The photographer was a stylish woman in her 40s, who greeted me with genuine enthusiasm. "Mature Margaret, I can't believe I'm actually meeting you," she gushed, shaking my hand warmly. "Your video about embracing your age instead of hiding it literally changed how I photograph older clients. I used to overfilter everyone, but now I focus on capturing the beauty that comes with experience." For the next 20 minutes, in a quiet corner of the vineyard with golden hour light streaming through the trees, Eliza photographed me. She directed me with respect and admiration, treating me not as an embarrassing elderly relative to be hidden away, but as someone worthy of being seen, wrinkles, silver hair, and all. "These are stunning," she said, showing me some of the shots on her camera display. "Would you be open to me using these on my website and social media? With full credit to you and your platforms, of course." "I'd be honored," I replied, feeling a small flame of vindication spark inside me. When I returned to the reception, dinner was being served. I took my assigned seat at a back table, far from the wedding party, and filled with Michael's distant cousins who barely knew me. Thomas had saved me a seat beside him, his expression thunderous. "I've been talking to some of the guests," he muttered as I sat down. "Apparently Jennifer has been telling everyone that you're difficult and attention-seeking because of your internet fame. She even suggested you might try to make her wedding go viral without permission." I set my napkin in my lap with deliberate calmness, though my hands trembled slightly. "Well, that explains the cold shoulders I've been getting. It's ridiculous. Half these people follow you online and love your content. They're just too intimidated by Jennifer to say anything." I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts. "Let's just get through tonight with dignity, shall we? Tomorrow is soon enough to decide what this means for my relationship with Michael and Jennifer going forward." Throughout dinner, I maintained my composure, making pleasant conversation with those at my table, despite the occasional pitying glance thrown my way. I applauded politely during the toasts, none of which I had been asked to give, despite tradition. I smiled appropriately during the first dance, and when the dance floor opened to all guests, I even joined Thomas for a gentle foxtrot to Frank Sinatra. It was during this dance that Eliza, the photographer, approached us again, her professional camera hanging around her neck. "Ms. Margaret, would you mind if I got a quick word? It's about those portraits we took." Thomas nodded encouragingly, and I followed Eliza to a quiet corner of the reception hall. "I hope this isn't overstepping," she said, lowering her voice, "but I couldn't help overhearing what happened earlier, about you being excluded from the family photos." I winced but nodded for her to continue. "Well, I wanted you to know that HarperCollins Publishing has a representative here tonight. Jennifer's uncle works for them. He saw me photographing you and asked who you were. When I mentioned you were mature Margaret, he nearly fell over himself with excitement. My confusion must have shown on my face because she quickly continued. They've apparently been trying to reach you about a potential book deal. Wisdom from the Digital Age, or something like that. A collection of your life advice paired with portraits of you and other older influencers. He gave me his card to pass along. She pressed a business card into my hand. James Peterson, Senior Acquisitions Editor. I stared at the card, momentarily speechless. A book deal? I'd been fielding various opportunities through my manager, but nothing from a publisher as prestigious as HarperCollins. Thank you, I finally managed. This is unexpected. There's more, Eliza said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. He asked if you'd be willing to take a few photos with him tonight. Just casual ones for their social media announcing the partnership if you're interested. They're prepared to make a very competitive offer. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my own family was trying to minimize my presence, a major publishing house wanted to showcase it. The contrast was both vindicating and deeply painful. I'd need to speak with my manager before committing to anything, I said, professional instincts kicking in despite my emotional turmoil. Of course, Eliza nodded. But would you be open to meeting him briefly? He's very eager to connect with you in person while you're both here. I glanced across the reception to where Michael and Jennifer were laughing with her parents, their backs turned to the rest of the room, and to me. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I'd spent months dimming my light to make them comfortable, only to be publicly humiliated and excluded on what should have been a day of family unity. Yes, I said decisively. I'd be happy to meet him. James Peterson was a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, with kind eyes, and an infectious enthusiasm for my content. My wife got me hooked on your videos, he confessed, as we found a quiet table to chat. Your piece about finding purpose after retirement really resonated with me. I'm still working, but it made me think differently about what comes next. We spoke for nearly half an hour about the potential book project, a beautiful coffee table book featuring my life wisdom paired with professional portraits, potentially launching a series featuring other influencers over 50. The advance he mentioned was substantial, enough to buy the small beachfront cottage I'd been eyeing as a retirement home. Of course, we'd want to announce this as soon as possible, James explained. The social media response to an influencer of your demographic making inroads into traditional publishing would be substantial. My demographic, I repeated with a small smile. You mean old people? He laughed. Experienced people. Wise people. People who've lived enough life to have something genuinely valuable to share. As we wrapped up our impromptu meeting, agreeing to have our respective representatives connect formally the next week, Eliza approached with her camera. Would you mind if I captured a few photos of you two? For HarperCollins' announcement if the deal moves forward? I hesitated, thinking of Jennifer's earlier edict about keeping me out of photos. But we were far from the main wedding party, and this was potentially a life-changing opportunity for me. I'd be delighted, I said, straightening my posture. As Eliza positioned us near a tasteful floral arrangement, capturing several professional-looking shots, I noticed a small commotion across the room. Jennifer was speaking animatedly to one of the venue coordinators, gesturing in our direction with increasing agitation. Moments later, the coordinator approached us, looking uncomfortable. "Excuse me," she began tentatively. "The bride has asked that no unauthorized photography take place during the reception." Before I could respond, James stepped forward smoothly. "I do apologize for any confusion. I'm James Peterson, the bride's uncle, her father's brother-in-law," he explained, stretching the connection slightly but not inaccurately. "I'm also with HarperCollins Publishing, and we're discussing a potential business arrangement with Ms. Wilson here. I've cleared these photos with the groom already." This last part was a complete fabrication, but delivered with such confident authority that the coordinator merely nodded and retreated, presumably to relay this information to an increasingly fuming Jennifer. "I should have mentioned, I do know the family slightly through marriage," James explained quietly to me, "though Jennifer and I have only met a few times at larger family gatherings." "Thank you for the quick thinking," I replied, impressed by his poise. "It's the publishing industry. We're used to navigating delicate situations." He smiled warmly. "Besides, I've observed enough today to see that your relationship with the bride is complex. I didn't want to make things more difficult for you." His perceptiveness and kindness nearly brought me to tears again. but I managed to maintain my composure as Eliza finished taking our photos. As the evening progressed, word somehow spread throughout the reception about my presence and my potential book deal. Guests who had earlier given me a wide berth began approaching my table, some admitting they were followers of my content, others expressing admiration for my digital career. Thomas watched it all with a satisfied smile, occasionally refilling my champagne glass as I graciously accepted their comments. "Quite the turnaround," he observed during a quiet moment. "Amazing what the HarperCollins name will do. I wish it didn't take external validation for them to treat me with basic respect," I replied, the evening's emotional roller coaster catching up with me. Thomas patted my hand. "People are shallow, Mom. Always have been, always will be. But at least you're getting some recognition now." Recognition indeed. Even Jennifer's parents made their way to my table, her father mentioning that his golf buddies were quite impressed when he mentioned his son was marrying mature Margaret's son. Her mother asked for my skincare recommendations, admitting she'd already purchased the retinol cream I'd featured in my Aging Gracefully series. The only ones who maintained their distance were Michael and Jennifer themselves. Throughout the evening, I caught Michael watching these interactions, his expression a complex mix of emotions I couldn't fully decipher: confusion, anger, perhaps even a hint of regret. Jennifer, for her part, maintained a rigid smile that didn't reach her eyes, occasionally whispering urgently to Michael when yet another guest approached me. As the night drew to a close and guests began to depart, I made my way to the exit, determined to leave with my dignity intact. I had almost reached the door when Michael finally approached me, alone. "Mom," he began, his voice strained. We need to talk about what happened today." I faced my son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the man who had stood by silently as his wife publicly humiliated me. "Yes, we do," I agreed quietly. "But not tonight. Tonight is your wedding night, and whatever issues lie between us shouldn't overshadow that. But the publisher, the photos, are business opportunities that have nothing to do with your wedding," I finished firmly. "I kept my promise, Michael. I didn't post anything about today on social media. I didn't seek attention or try to make your wedding about me. I simply existed as both your mother and as a person with my own life and career. A career your wife deemed embarrassing and you apparently agreed was worthy of public ridicule." His face flushed. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I interrupted, keeping my voice low but intense. "And we will discuss it, but not tonight, and not until I've had time to process what this means for our relationship going forward." I reached up and straightened his slightly crooked bow tie, a maternal gesture I'd performed countless times throughout his life. "Be happy with Jennifer. That's all I've ever wanted for you. We'll sort the rest out later." Before he could respond, I turned and walked out of the venue, head held high despite the tears threatening to spill over. Thomas was waiting for me beside his rental car, ready to drive me home. "You okay?" he asked simply as I approached. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." The next morning, I woke to a flurry of notifications on my phone. Eliza had sent the portraits she'd taken of me at the wedding to my professional email, along with a warm note thanking me for the opportunity and confirming that James Peterson was eager to move forward with the book project discussions. There were also several missed calls from Michael and a text that simply read, "Mom, please call me when you can. We need to talk." I set the phone aside without responding. There would be time for that conversation, but I needed space to sort through my own feelings first. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my garden, reflecting on the previous day's events and what they revealed about my relationship with my son and his new wife. By mid-morning, I'd reached several painful but necessary conclusions. First, Michael and Jennifer's treatment of me wasn't simply about my social media presence. It was about control, about their discomfort with my independence and success later in life. Second, while I desperately wanted to maintain a relationship with my son, it could no longer be at the expense of my own dignity and self-respect. And third, the community I'd built online, the connections I'd made with followers and fellow creators, were genuine and valuable, regardless of what my family thought. With these realizations firmly in mind, I finally called my manager, Diana, to fill her in on the HarperCollins opportunity and the events of the wedding. They did what? Diana's outrage on my behalf was both validating and comforting. Excluded you from photos at your own son's wedding? Because you're successful online? That's beyond absurd. It was painful, I admitted, but in a strange way, illuminating. I've been walking on eggshells around them for months, trying not to be too much, as Michael put it. Perhaps it's time I stopped dimming my light to make others comfortable with my shine. That's exactly the kind of wisdom that's made you successful, Margaret, Diana said warmly. And it's precisely why HarperCollins is interested. Speaking of which, I've already received an email from James Peterson this morning. They're serious about the book deal and want to move quickly. We spent the next hour discussing the details of the potential deal, the timeline, and how it might integrate with my existing content calendar. By the time we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction, despite the lingering hurt from Michael's betrayal. Later that afternoon, as I was reviewing the portrait photos Eliza had sent, truly beautiful images that captured both my age and my vitality, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing on my porch, still in his traveling clothes, clearly having come straight from his honeymoon hotel. "Mom," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I need to explain about yesterday." I stepped back, allowing him into the house but maintaining my emotional distance. "I'm listening." He paced my living room, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "Jennifer was stressed about the wedding. You know how she gets when she's anxious. She didn't mean what she said about keeping you out of the photos, didn't she?" I replied evenly, because her actions have been consistent with those words for months now. The late invitation, the third-row seating, the back table placement at the reception. None of that happened in the heat of the moment, Michael. Those were deliberate choices. He had the grace to look ashamed. Things got out of hand. Her parents were putting a lot of pressure on her to have a perfect wedding, and we worried that your online presence might draw attention away from the day. "My existence as someone other than just your mother drew attention away from your day?" I clarified, keeping my voice steady despite my rising indignation. "My career, my independence, my finding purpose and connection at this stage of my life, that was the problem? No. Yes, I don't know." He collapsed onto my sofa, suddenly looking very young and confused. "It's just, do you know how weird it is to have a mom who's famous on the internet? To have colleagues and friends constantly bringing up your videos? To never know when some part of our family life might end up as content?" I sat down across from him, maintaining eye contact. "I have never shared anything about you or Jennifer without permission. Not once. I've respected your privacy, even as you've disdained my choices. But you're everywhere," he insisted. "People recognize you in restaurants. You get sent free products. You make more money talking to a phone camera than I do after years of education and working my way up in accounting. It's not how things are supposed to be." And there it was, the real issue laid bare. Not concern for my dignity or safety online, as they'd initially claimed. Not worry about privacy or exploitation. Simply discomfort with my success, with the disruption of traditional expectations about aging, motherhood, and who deserves recognition. "Michael," I said softly, "the world has changed. There are no longer rigid rules about what people can achieve at different stages of life. My success doesn't diminish yours. My finding purpose and community doesn't threaten your place in my heart. I know that," he said, though his expression suggested he was still wrestling with the concept. "Intellectually, I know that, but it still feels off." "That's something you'll need to work through then," I replied, not unkindly but firmly, "because I won't be going back to a smaller version of myself to make you comfortable. I love being your mother. It's the greatest joy of my life. But it's not my only identity, and it never should have been." He was quiet for a long moment, absorbing my words. "Jennifer's upset about the book deal," he finally said. "She thinks you orchestrated the whole thing to embarrass her at the wedding." I couldn't help the short, incredulous laugh that escaped me. That would require a level of Machiavellian planning I'm quite certain I'm not capable of. The photographer recognized me. Her boss was a fan. James Peterson happened to be there as a distant relative of Jennifer's family. None of that was my doing. "But you took advantage of the situation," he pressed. "I accepted an exciting professional opportunity that presented itself," I corrected, "just as you would in your career, just as Jennifer would in hers." Another silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken emotions and unresolved tensions. Finally, Michael sighed deeply. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. "That starts with recognizing what this actually is," I said gently. This isn't about social media or book deals or wedding photos. It's about respect, Michael. It's about whether you and Jennifer can respect my choices and my autonomy, even when they don't align with your expectations. He nodded slowly, though I could see he was still struggling. And if we're still working on that, where does that leave us? I reached across the coffee table and took his hand. My boy, for all his 35 years and newly married status, it leaves us at a crossroads. I will always love you. You will always be my son. But our relationship needs to evolve into one between adults who respect each other's choices and boundaries. And practically speaking, Sunday dinners, holidays, those can continue if you both want them to, I said carefully, but only with clear boundaries. No more snide comments about my little internet videos. No more suggesting I should be embarrassed by my age or success. And a genuine apology from both of you for what happened at the wedding. Michael looked down at our joined hands. Jennifer may need some time. Take all the time you need, I replied, gently withdrawing my hand. I'll be here, living my life fully, both as your mother and as mature Margaret. After Michael left, promising to talk with Jennifer and get back to me, I felt simultaneously drained and liberated. The conversation had been difficult, but necessary, the first step toward either rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms or accepting that it might never be what I'd hoped. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work with renewed passion. Diana and I finalized the HarperCollins contract, a 2-book deal with an advance that secured my financial future well into my later years. Eliza's portraits became the centerpiece of the announcement, which garnered attention from major media outlets interested in the story of a woman finding success and purpose in her 60s. Thomas, ever supportive, called daily from Seattle to check on me and offer encouragement. "Have you heard from Michael?" he asked tentatively, about a week after the wedding. "Not yet," I admitted, "but I'm giving them space. They don't deserve your grace, Mom," he said fiercely. "What they did was cruel." "Perhaps not," I agreed, "but I'm not extending grace for their benefit. I'm doing it for mine. Holding on to anger would only diminish my joy in this new chapter." 2 weeks after the wedding, as I was filming a reaction video to trending skincare products, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Jennifer standing on my porch, alone and looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I invited her into my living room, the same space where Michael and I had had our difficult conversation. She sat perched on the edge of the sofa, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Michael says I need to apologize," she began, her tone making it clear this wasn't her idea. "Only if you actually feel remorse," I replied calmly. "Forced apologies aren't particularly meaningful." She flushed slightly. "I do regret how things happened at the wedding. It wasn't our best moment." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Jennifer finally sighed. "Look, Margaret, I've never quite known how to relate to you. You're not like my mother or any of my friends' mothers. You're different." "Different bad?" I prompted. "Different unexpected," she clarified. "You were supposed to be just Michael's quiet librarian mom who baked cookies and babied him. Instead, you're this independent person with your own life and career and fans. It's disorienting." I couldn't help but smile slightly. "I was a person before I was Michael's mother, Jennifer. And I'll be a person long after being his mother is no longer my primary role." "I know that," she said quickly. "Intellectually, I know that, but it feels like you're changing the rules somehow. The rules changed decades ago," I said gently. "Women of my generation fought for the right to be more than just mothers and grandmothers and wives. The fact that I'm expressing that through digital platforms rather than traditional careers doesn't make it any less valid." She was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. "Your book deal is impressive," she finally said, changing the subject slightly. "Uncle James, well, he's not really my uncle, more like my father's cousin's husband. Anyway, he called my father raving about you. Said you're going to revolutionize how publishers think about senior audiences." "That's the goal," I acknowledged. "There are millions of us out here, with purchasing power and wisdom to share. It's about time media recognize that." Jennifer nodded, then took a deep breath. "I am sorry, Margaret. Truly. What I said at the wedding was cruel and uncalled for. I was stressed and jealous and took it out on you in the worst possible way." "Jealous?" I repeated, genuinely surprised. "Of what?" Of how easily everything seems to come to you, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. I worked for years to build my real estate business. I network constantly, send gift baskets to clients, maintain the perfect image, and you just talk to a camera about your life and suddenly have this massive following and book deals and sponsorships? I laughed softly, without mockery. Oh, Jennifer, if you think any of this came easily, you haven't been paying attention. I work 60-hour weeks creating content, engaging with followers, negotiating with brands. I've dealt with online harassment, ageist comments, technical challenges that would make your head spin. Nothing about this has been easy. It's just been fulfilling. I hadn't thought about it that way, she admitted. I just saw the results, not the work behind them. That's often the case with success of any kind, I pointed out. The visible rewards rarely reveal the invisible efforts. Another silence fell, but this one felt less strained, more contemplative. Finally, Jennifer spoke again. Michael misses you. He's been miserable these past weeks. I miss him too, I said honestly. But things need to change between us if we're going to move forward. I know, she nodded. We've been talking about it a lot, about boundaries and respect and family dynamics. I think we're ready to try again, if you are. I'd like that, I said, feeling a cautious hope bloom within me. Perhaps you could both come for dinner next Sunday. A fresh start? Jennifer agreed, and as she left, there was a tentative warmth between us that hadn't existed before. Not friendship, exactly, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. The months that followed brought significant changes to all our lives. My book project moved forward at an exciting pace, with photo shoots, writing sessions, and planning meetings filling my calendar. My social media presence continued to grow, particularly after a feature article in AARP magazine highlighted my journey from retired librarian to digital influencer. Michael and Jennifer kept their word about working on our relationship. Sunday dinners resumed, initially somewhat awkward, but gradually warming as we established new patterns of interaction. Jennifer even asked for my advice when her real estate agency decided to expand their social media presence, a small but meaningful acknowledgement of my expertise. The most surprising development came 6 months after the wedding, when my publisher organized a launch party for my book at an elegant hotel in the city. I'd invited Michael and Jennifer, of course, but expected them to decline, still wary of being associated with my public persona. Instead, they not only attended but arrived early to help me prepare, Jennifer bringing a beautiful corsage that matched my outfit. "For the guest of honor," she said, pinning it to my dress with steady hands. Every successful author needs a signature accessory. During the event, as I signed books and posed for photos with readers, I caught sight of Michael across the room, watching me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Pure, uncomplicated pride. Later, when my publisher asked if anyone from my family would like to say a few words, it was Michael who stepped forward. "For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Wilson, Margaret's son," he began, his voice clear and confident. "And I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't always been supportive of her journey into digital content creation, and now, authorship." A surprised murmur went through the crowd as he continued. Like many people, I had preconceived notions about what a woman in her 60s should be doing with her time. I expected my mother to slip quietly into a traditional grandmother role, to make herself small and unobtrusive to accommodate my own narrow vision of family dynamics. He turned to look at me directly. I was wrong, profoundly wrong. My mother has always been exceptional, as a parent, as a librarian, as a widow navigating grief, and now as a digital creator and author. Her courage in reinventing herself, in claiming space in a youth-dominated industry, in speaking truth about aging and wisdom. It's nothing short of inspirational. Tears filled my eyes as he concluded. "I'm learning, belatedly perhaps, that the greatest gift we can give our parents is not our expectations, but our respect for their continuing journey as complete human beings. Mom, I'm so incredibly proud of you, and I can't wait to see what you do next." The room erupted in applause as Michael embraced me, whispering, "I love you," against my hair. Jennifer joined us, her own eyes suspiciously bright, forming a family circle that felt, for perhaps the first time, genuinely supportive and whole. That night, after the last guests had departed and I was alone in my quiet house, I filmed a rare personal video for my platforms. No filters, no perfect lighting, just me in my post-event exhaustion and elation. Tonight was a reminder that growth is possible at any age, And I don't just mean for those of us in our 60s, I told my followers, letting my emotions show. Relationships can heal. Perspectives can shift. New chapters can begin when you least expect them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of comments from followers sharing their own family reconciliation stories, their late-in-life reinventions, their hopes for bridging similar divides. One comment in particular caught my eye. "Watching your journey has given me courage to pursue my painting at 70. My children thought I was having a crisis. Today, my daughter helped me set up an online portfolio. Thank you for leading the way." And that perhaps has been the greatest reward of this unexpected journey. Not the book deals or brand partnerships or social media metrics, but the knowledge that by standing firmly in my authentic self, I've helped others find the courage to do the same. My son's wedding day began with rejection and humiliation, a painful reminder of how deeply ingrained our societal expectations about aging remain. But it ended up being the catalyst for genuine transformation. In my career, in my family relationships, and in my understanding of my own worth and purpose. When the wedding photographer asked if I should be kept out of the photos, she couldn't have known she was witnessing the final moment of my willingness to make myself smaller for others' comfort. From that day forward, I chose to embrace my full stature. As a mother, yes, but also as a creator, an influencer, an author, and a woman refusing to disappear just because society expects it of me at this stage of life. And that, dear viewers, is the most powerful form of justice. Not revenge or retribution, but the quiet, unstoppable reclamation of one's own story, told in one's own voice, unapologetically and authentically. If my journey has resonated with you in any way, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to this channel. We're so close to hitting that 1,000 subscriber mark. Each new subscription brings us one step closer to being able to share more stories like mine with a wider audience. Your support means everything, and I promise there are many more emotional, inspiring stories to come. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you go. You'll be part of a community that values authentic experiences and the wisdom that comes from life's most challenging moments. Thank you for being here with me today.